I'd like to start today by introducing you to one of my most trustworthy mentors. She's the short one in the middle that I'm hugging. That's my daughter. She's also 5. And the reason I think of her as one of my mentors is because she's always having these just really great moments of insight and wisdom when we're doing something completely ordinary. So my story actually starts a couple months back. We'd had a pretty heavy rain that morning, and she and I were headed into school. So we've parked, we've gotten out of the car, managed to get her backpack on, and we're walking up towards the sidewalk, and she stops me and says, "Look, Mommy, a puddle." And then she says, "Let's jump in it." So for the other parents out there, you already know my first idea was not let's jump in it. But when I saw the look of just excitement and sheer joy on her face, I knew that I was going to have to make that happen for her. So we strategized a little bit. We decide we'll grab hands, count to 3, and then jump in the puddle. So we've done a little bit of planning. So in we go. We're splashing around. I think some of the other parents walking in thought I was a little bit crazy, but totally worth it. We had a lot of fun that morning as we did that together. But it was actually on my way to work that I had a really interesting thought. Why was it that my daughter saw something as regular as a puddle and immediately went to this place of joy, and then I went to a place of caution? And I think that's because joy, when we really sit with it, makes us feel vulnerable. Brené Brown says that joy is the most vulnerable emotion that we experience. And I think it's always kind of funny when you hear about something in the research and read that, and then you realize, oh my gosh, that's me. Brené Brown knows me. And I really had that experience that morning because my daughter and I had very different reactions to what was this moment of joy and just took 2 different paths. And I think joy is interesting like that, right? So some of us go to this place where we can just enjoy it and have fun. We feel grateful. And some of us feel that for a minute, and then we start thinking about all of the stuff that might go wrong, right? The other shoe is going to drop. I like to illustrate that a little further with what I call perceived dirt versus actual dirt. So let's take a look at the perceived dirt first. In my mind, I was like, this is going to be a mud run. She's going to be filthy, covered head to toe dirt. We're going to have to go home and change clothes. I was concerned she might get hurt. My luck, I would definitely get hurt, but nothing good was going to come from this experience in the puddle. But let's take a look at the actual dirt instead. Yep, that's it. If you look really closely, you might actually be able to see some. But other than that, no cuts, no bruises, just evidence of a little girl having a great time with her mom that morning. Now, I know at this point you're thinking, Alicia, of course she felt joy. She's 5. She hasn't been beaten down by life yet, and that's true. But let's think about a group of people who have traveled the road of utter despair, grad students. And seriously, if you are one or you have been, you know that struggle is very real. But in all seriousness, I went to a graduation ceremony recently, and I was standing where the students were lining up to walk across the stage, and I could kind of hear them talking. And one of the students was saying, what if this whole thing is just a total waste of time? I feel like I put so much into this. I don't even know if I'm going to get a good job after this. And I feel like I need to start thinking about the next program that I'm going to apply to. And then her friend, who I'm assuming was her friend, replied back to her, and she said, yeah, I kind of thought about that too. But hey, are you coming to my party tonight? I actually think I might throw myself a couple parties this month because I am so glad this is over. They approached that problem fundamentally differently. And I think what's interesting for me is that I have been both of those students, right? The one who was like, oh, what's going to happen next? And then I've also been the one who was really like, I am just so thankful, right? But the question becomes, how do we become the second student? How do we get into that zone where we can feel like that? Brené Brown also found that the participants in her research who really embraced joy went to a place of gratitude instead of thinking about all the things that could go wrong. My daughter is somebody who just really gets this one right. She sees joy in places that I think a lot of us just forget to look. It's actually one of my favorite things about her, and I learn something probably every day from her about this idea. But let's take a look at some of the other lessons that I have learned from her about joy. Last spring, around the time of her birthday, we were headed into school again, and she saw a dandelion. So being 5, she wants to stop and pick it and make a wish. And as the seeds are kind of floating away, she says, Mommy, do you want to know what I wished for? And I was like, oh, no, don't tell me because then it won't come true. And she looks at me and says, Mommy, that's not true. So I had to laugh because it's totally not true, and I just lied to my child. Great. But haven't we all received that messaging that if we tell other people what we wish for, then it won't happen and we will have done or said something to get in the way of it? But what we really need to do is speak those wishes into existence. And I think when we do that, when we share with others what our hopes and dreams are for the future, they actually become even more real. You probably also noticed that a lot of my stories start with us on our way to school. So we're on our way to school one morning. And I'm looking out my car window at just the sea of brake lights in front of me and kind of glancing back and forth between that and the clock thinking, I hope we make it. And a big part of the problem is that literally every morning I lose 15 to 20 minutes just trying to convince her to wear pants with buttons. But we're there, we're going, and she looks out the window and sees the sun coming up, which she calls a sunset. And she says, Mommy, look at all the beautiful colors of that sunset. And so we end up talking about that, and she thinks it looks kind of like a rainbow. And I find that my outlook on the day just completely changes as we talk through that. And for me, that's really about this idea of reflection and taking the time to see what's right in front of us when we literally just take a moment to look out the window. She did also tell me that morning, Mommy, I hope it's this beautiful when you win your race. And what she's actually talking about is that my sister and I recently were getting ready to run a 10-mile race. Our goal was to finish, which we did. Certainly did not win, but they still give you a really great medal at the end. So I brought that home, and I put it on my daughter so that she could try it out. And she wore that medal around all day long. And you know, I think it's important for us to celebrate our accomplishments when they happen, but why not even beyond that? If we spent even half the time celebrating that we do, practicing or getting ready for something, the joy really would last for months. And so I think it becomes this idea of how do we incorporate all of that into our own lives? So let me tell you my no good, very bad day story. Again, we're getting ready in the morning, and I have finally found her a pair of pants with no buttons, only to find out that she now really hates zippers. And when I get to work, I'm walking into my 8 o'clock meeting at 7:59, and as I'm getting settled, I realize, oh my gosh, I left my lunch at home on the counter, which is doubly bad because I skipped breakfast dealing with the whole zipper fiasco. The rest of the day is just kind of meeting after meeting, just running the whole day, and my way home takes me about 45 extra minutes on my commute just because, you know, typical Houston, y'all know how that goes. And then when I do get home, I find that my husband has actually gone shopping to buy her a bunch of new pants that feature both buttons and zippers. So because of this, they are both grumpy and hungry. But you know, that really is a day that I'll never get back. And what if instead it looks something like this? It's not that I left my lunch at home on the counter. It's that now I had an opportunity to go try out the new taco place with all my colleagues from work. And instead of being mad and frustrated that I sat in traffic for an extra 45 minutes, I ended up finding a couple new back roads that now on a normal day save me about 10 minutes from my commute. And rather than be frustrated with my daughter because she really doesn't want to wear pants with buttons or zippers, I can really live in the moment and envision just sending her to school in a onesie. So don't waste your next 24 hours. Enjoy them. Thank you.